Kim Iversen is Tell It Like It Is, no BS broadcaster with years of experience hosting daily shows across the country on the FM dial.
Like I said, the indictments that came, were any of them because of Russian meddling?
Yes. Yes! Yes!
I will call out people who I think take money from other countries and they don't declare it. People like yourself, probably.
Did you just say that I'm taking money from any other what did
I mean, you act like you do. Like, if you did take money to push pro-Kremlin talking points, you would say the exact same things.
All three branches of
You're
government.
a piece of Let me just say it. You're a piece of Sorry, you just are.
The right-wing grift, man, it's calling me, okay? I need to live that good life. Friends, if you have a second or two, click like, comment down below. I would really appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I hope you enjoy the video. All right, let's do this. Let's jump into this debate. First of all, who is this person that he's debating? Who is this person? Kim Iversen is a YouTuber. She has 500,000 followers. She just looks like right-wing content. The censorship industrial complex is using this insane loophole to censor Americans. Meet the anti-genocide candidate running for president. Wait, she literally interviewed Jill Stein?
Dr. Jill Stein, welcome back to the show.
An extremely precarious.
Jesus Christ.
Right now, the Conservative Party in the United States is completely and totally divorced from any type of factual reality. I think that the Democrats, whether you agree or disagree with their policies, are at least more in the real world than the Republicans are. If you want, you can look through the Dominion lawsuit against Fox News, where Fox News...
There's just no question that I think, like, Democrats in this country right now, not even the politicians, just the politicians, but the voters as well, like we're the adults in the room. The Republican Party, I mean, as bad as it was when Donald Trump was elected in 2016, it's actually so much worse now. We essentially live in entirely different universes. 70% of registered Republicans believe that the last election was stolen. A full quarter of registered Republicans, according to the poll that I saw recently, a full quarter of registered Republicans believe in the basic idea of QAnon, that there is a shadowy cabal of liberal politicians and Hollywood elite that are kidnapping and eating children, essentially. A full quarter believe that. What is a widespread delusional belief that median Democratic voters have? There's just nothing that compares to what we're seeing in right-wing circles right now. Nothing even comes close.
literally says over and over again, we're going to lie about the Dominion machines. They do lie about the Dominion machines. The reason why they do that is to keep up with the other false conservative media that's lying about the Dominion machines. And you can see this over and over and over again, whether it's all of the allegations of voter fraud, where Sidney Powell and Giuliani have said that they lied about it.
Advice giver, thank you so much for
voter fraud claims
66 months.
that he has been told over and over again are not true. Yeah, I just think that the fact that conservatives are no longer based in reality is a huge threat to really the world, because it makes it so we can't live in the same reality, so we can't even discuss policies, and instead we're wasting all of our time debating conspiracies. And that's, I think, one
really all they have is, yeah, but you guys thought Russia.
One really good reason to support the Democratic Party on policies. I think supporting the parties are supporting the Democratic Party or the Harris candidacy is also important, because Trump has no policies. Every time he opens his mouth, he just says some random crazy stuff. He's talking about a 10%, 20% tariff on all imports. I don't even know if he fully knows what a tariff is. At times where we're worried about things like inflation, the idea of adding like 10 or 20% of a...
I mean, to be clear, Russiagate was not a hoax. There was some question about the level of involvement that the Trump campaign had in Russia's operation, disinformation operation, their hacking operation. There were open questions about like how much coordination was there, but the basic skeleton of the story of Russia's interference in 2016 was, and it's on video, Donald Trump got in front of a podium and said, Russia, if you're listening, you should basically hack Hillary's emails, and I believe you will be mightily rewarded by our press. And then hours later, literally hours later, this came out in the Mueller report, Russian hackers started a phishing scheme against Democratic National Committee employees and people on Hillary's campaign. They eventually did hack into the emails of the DNC server. They hacked into the emails of John Podesta, who was Hillary's campaign manager back in 2016. They laundered the hacked material through WikiLeaks. And then Donald Trump referenced WikiLeaks, I think like over 200 times in the final month of the election. So there is no question that Donald Trump invited Russia to hack his opponent. They did. And then Donald Trump used those hack materials to push all kinds of narratives in the closing month of the election. Namely, he was targeting Bernie or bust people by spreading the false narrative that the DNC literally stole the primary election from Bernie. That was like the main crux of his propaganda efforts during the last month of the election. All of that it happened. That's what I consider Russiagate.
I think that in terms of economic policy or in terms of domestic policy, I think that the Democrats are much more able to get real stuff done rather than just kind of like pander to an audience. For example, Trump ran on building the wall. He had 4 years to build the wall. He didn't build the wall. He had Republicans in both halves of Congress. There's really no excuse for his failures other than blaming the people around him.
We need to give him credit for that, right?
He wouldn't just do that again the next 4 years that he's in. Spoiler alert. He will do that again. You compare Donald Trump's, saying we're going to do something about China to Biden passing the CHIPS Act because he was able to actually be an effective leader and get Congress to legislate an actual bill. Or if you look at how the Democrats tried to tackle the border problem, where they had a bill and Trump shot it down because he wants to keep the border open for election season. I think it's clear that the Democrats win when it comes to actual policy.
I mean, probably the most impactful delusion that Republicans have is extreme skepticism of the vaccine. We were able to demonstrate with data that after the vaccine was distributed initially, especially in the first 6 to 12 months, it was overwhelmingly red districts in this country that were seeing larger numbers of COVID deaths, hospitalizations. If you were a median Democratic voter, you were far more likely to trust in the science and go get vaccinated, go get boosted. It had a real effect. You could argue that it impacted the composition of the electorate. Just kind of crazy stuff, right?
And I think Donald Trump as an individual is an abhorrent...
I'm a big fan of you, buddy. Thank you.
Un-American, unpatriotic, treasonous person who tried to weaponize the DOJ. He tried to create fake slates of electors in order to overturn the electoral vote. He basically chair-led violence on January 6th to try to pressure legislators to not certify the vote. And he tried to subvert the peaceful transfer of power, only leaving when, at multiple stops, there were other people inside of the administration that basically stopped his attempt to, take over power in the United States to prevent the actual outcome of the last election from coming to fruition. So I think that Harris is a very, very easy choice over Trump, basically no matter which way you look at it. But yeah, that's my argument.
And we're going to take it over to Kim. Thanks for being with us, Kim. The floor is all yours for your opening as well.
Thank you. The reason why you should not vote for Kamala Harris, I think the biggest reason why you should not is to protect democracy, the very thing that Democrats claim they're constantly trying to protect. Meanwhile, Vice President Kamala Harris ran for president in 2020. She ended up having to drop out early from the race before the first primary vote because her candidacy did not generate any significant support among the Democratic electorate. There was a lack of enthusiasm. There was a lack.
This argument just immediately crumbles when you look at Dem voter satisfaction with Kamala as the candidate now. I don't know what it's at now, but I'm going to guess that 98%, and I'm not even kidding, 98% of Democratic voters are happy that she took over the nomination. I don't know anybody that isn't happy that she took over at this point.
Lack of confidence in her leadership. Nonetheless, even without all of that support, she ended up being selected by party elites to be the vice president for Joe Biden.
That's not even technically true. I believe Nancy Pelosi and a lot of the other, I think Obama, it was reported that they wanted an open convention type situation. And Biden, being the legend that he is, actually surprised them when he endorsed her on his way out. Are you guys aware of this? Pelosi was jockeying for a 4-week open primary before the convention, and Biden was like, nope, I'm going to go out on my terms. And so he initially wrote the letter, and in the same letter, he endorsed Kamala, and it actually surprised a lot of the party elite people. And he ended up being totally vindicated. It was the right move.
Furthermore, then what Democrats have done is they have squashed any ounce of the ability to have an election. They squashed any candidates that were challenging Joe Biden, unlike Republicans who actually had a primary trying to...
What she's saying is silly. I mean, I don't know how Democratic primary people were squashed. How was RFK squashed? How was Dean Phillips squashed? And for her to be like, well, the Republicans actually had a primary. Yeah, Donald Trump didn't show up to a single debate. He didn't show up to a single debate. Now, I'm not if I was in his shoes, I wouldn't have either, but it's just a really terrible point to make to be like, well, we actually had an open primary and we had a contest and blah, blah, blah. No, the Republicans had their own coronation as well. Primary
Donald Trump, we saw numerous candidates going after Donald Trump. Nikki Haley ran a very fierce campaign against him. So did Ron DeSantis. Meanwhile, Democrats actually buried any possible counter to any alternatives to Joe Biden. They then decided to take the guy out to pasture.
primary voters buried anybody who opposed Biden during the primary contest.
Essentially pushing him aside against his will. They then had
He voluntarily stepped aside. Nobody could force him to do that.
no open primary in order to nominate Kamala Harris as the candidate. And they instead, once again, in the same very way that they made her the vice president candidate, the party elites from a very top-down structure without the support of the American people, without the support of their Democratic voters.
Everything is a confession with these people because Donald Trump has become the party elite for the Republican Party. Anybody who steps out of line in the Republican Party is put in his crosshairs. He will destroy anyone's political career for even mildly criticizing him or mildly disagreeing with him on anything.
Decided to
The kind of power structure that she is sort of alleging is in place in the Democratic Party, it's actually like that times 10 in the Republican Party.
anoint Kamala Harris as the candidate.
Donald Trump's daughter-in-law is a co-chair of the Republican National Committee. How the f did that happen?
If you care about democracy,
Can you imagine what they would have said if they made Hunter Biden a co-chair of the DNC or Hunter Biden's wife? Can you imagine? There are no standards for the Republicans. They don't apply the standards that they seem to be applying to Democrats. They do not apply that to themselves whatsoever. Because if they did, they would understand that their whole argument is just completely full of shit.
even if you like Kamala Harris, to support that type of anti-democratic behavior is signing off on this happening over and over and over again.
This is just nonsense.
To agree to this. Maybe you like Kamala Harris today. Maybe she is the person that you think you agree with her policies. But the fact that Democrats have done it in this very undemocratic way, you're paving the way for this sort of authoritarian top-down form of leadership that the next time the candidate that you don't like could end up being the one nominated. Although I will say that the vast majority of the voters do not like Kamala Harris, so she's not a particularly popular.
Not according to the public opinion polls. There are a couple public opinion polls where she's actually above 50%, which is kind of crazy in the modern era for any politician to be above 50%. It's kind of a big deal.
Candidate. She has the lowest approval rating of any vice president ever in
Check the updated polls, Missy. What's more relevant, a poll today or a poll 2 months ago?
the history of this nation since polling has come out, with a net negative rating of -17. So, Kamala, if you care about democracy, if that's something that you genuinely want to preserve in this nation, then you cannot support the way that the Democratic Party has gone forward nominating their candidate.
Yeah, I guess the first thing is, do we agree that Donald Trump thought that Vice President Pence could choose him as the winner of the last election?
I don't know what Donald Trump thought when it came to that. I think that there are some legalities with how our country runs that do allow for certain procedures. A lot of them are really wonky and they get into the weeds. So there is maybe a possibility that he thought something
idea what
could
she's
happen.
talking about.
But
Okay, are you
or
aware
maybe he
that
didn't.
are you aware that Trump and Eastman wanted Pence to break the law in Congress, the Electoral Count Act? They wanted him to break that law to choose Donald Trump to remain president.
Once again, I'm not sure if that was breaking the law or if that was using an obscure
She has
procedural
no idea what she's talking
rule
about.
that would allow for something along those lines. That has been debated by experts. I am not an expert on that, but experts do debate that.
To be clear, experts don't debate it. Are you aware that Eastman himself said on first
How do you know?
pass?
Why do you say that?
Eastman said that it's not gonna pass the Supreme Court. So he knew that what he was doing was breaking the law.
Experts don't debate that when they do debate
Because
that.
there are
that
none.
is.
Find them and bring them to me, and I will destroy all of them.
You
No
don't think
real
that there are
expert.
any-
No, there are none.
That there are any experts that debate whether or not there are
Name one. Just name one. Name a couple experts that are like, nah, maybe that was constitutional. Maybe he could have done that.
some procedural rules that would allow for certain things to happen during those procedures. You don't think that there's
In fact, I believe there was somebody asked Eastman, so, if Al Gore would have done this in 2000, do you think that would have been okay? And he said, oh God, no. Like Eastman himself was like, no.
any expert out there that was arguing that, because I heard numerous experts saying that there was this obscure rule that would allow something like that to happen.
Maybe from other countries, but not from the United States. No, there were no serious experts arguing this. That's why Eastman himself said that if it went to the Supreme Court, he said they'd probably lose 7-2, and then he said they'd probably lose 9-0.
7-2. So 2 of the Supreme Court justices, do you not think that they know the laws of this country?
Eastman was asked on first pass, do you think that they would win in the Supreme Court? And he said, we would probably lose 7-2, and then he admitted they would lose 9-0.
But actually, we don't know because it never went to the Supreme Court. But had it, maybe it would lose.
She's missing the point. She's just missing the point. Eastman himself said this is very unlikely to pass. No, he essentially said this will not pass the Supreme Court.
7-2. I'm not saying it would have won, but the fact that there maybe would have been 2 or 3 justices that would have ruled in favor show that there is an obscure rule that potentially could have been used that Trump thought that would be.
Who is this Kim Iversen person? So like, how did she come to be? Kim Iversen bio. I feel like I'm being catfished. Is this her? Is that the same person? I think it's the same person. Kim Iversen is tell it like it is. No BS broadcaster. It literally, I feel like this was written by a Russian. Kim Iversen is tell it like it is. No BS broadcaster with years of experience hosting daily shows across the country on the FM dial. Literally, it feels like it was written by like a Kremlin agent. Known for her candid honesty, intelligence, and uncanny ability to relate to people from all backgrounds. Audiences have tuned in to Kim's show night after night for thought-provoking insight and stimulating conversations. Who wrote this? What is this? After a brief stint in television, Kim returned to radio for more talk time and creative freedom by moving to co-host mornings. What the is this?
Possible.
If you're the progenitor, if you're the originator of the idea, and even you think that you would lose in the Supreme Court, but maybe 2 people will side with you, that doesn't seem like an idea that's hotly contested by experts.
Experts clearly, if 2 of them would agree to it, then maybe you wouldn't win, but it still doesn't mean that the rule isn't worth challenging. There's plenty of cases that lose in the Supreme Court. It doesn't make them not worth challenging.
Do you think it would be in line with American democracy for the president to tell the vice president to ignore the will of the voters and choose who the next president is going to be?
I think that if the will of the voters was ignored by the electoral process and if the vote was rigged, then yes, absolutely, it would be the responsibility of the president of the United States to actually put that forward to protect democracy in this country.
No. That's the court's job. That's the court's job. What she's describing is essentially a dictator.
Depends on how you look at it. If it were Donald Trump who subverted the election and Kamala Harris actually wins and you believe in your mind or you know for sure that she actually won, wouldn't
She's saying that if a president thinks that there was voter fraud, he should be allowed to direct the VP to ignore the will of the voters.
The only reason you're against it is because of the person. And you've got to look deeper than that. It's got to be about the actual process, not the person. Donald Trump might not be your guy or my guy, but nonetheless, the process needs to be protected.
Yes, I agree with that. You already said that you don't know the process, so I don't know why you're appealing to the process. Donald Trump did try to challenge the election with 64 different court cases. He won one of them in an inconsequential Pennsylvania case that didn't really impact much of the vote at all. He lost the other 63. He was shot down in the Supreme Court a number of times, and he was shot down.
Whoa. Shot down? Let's tone down the rhetoric, Destiny.
When he tried to present false evidence to state legislatures a number of times, everywhere that he tried the process, he lost. And that ended up with him begging Pence to basically just choose him as the winner of the election. At what point can we not say this is probably anti-democratic?
How is that anti-democratic? He went through the process. If you challenge things in court and you lose in court, that's still using the process. Just because you lost doesn't...
Nope, that's not what Destiny said. It's fine that he challenged in court. He has every right to do that. If he wants to try to make a case, that's fine. What he did goes well above and beyond the judicial process. He tried to adjudicate all these individual claims of fraud in dozens of different courts across the country, failed in basically every single case. And then when that didn't work, he tried to pressure his own VP to ignore the will of the voters in like 7 states.
Hot. MP5.
Look at that. That's the form of a man right there.
mean that you're doing anything illegal.
It was illegal to break the ECA. He lost in the courts. That's why he told Pence, I need you to break the law and choose me to be president. That was the process. He went through the courts and he lost. He didn't like the result. And then he asked Pence to choose him to be the winner of the election. This is anti-democratic.
I believe that that is part of the, if that's part of the process, that's part of the process.
Was it part of the process when they had people forge in 7 different states that they were the electors and that they wanted to vote?
$5 says she doesn't even know what he's talking about.
For Trump?
Again, there are a lot of rules with the process. In fact, when the Democrats were upset that Donald Trump had won in 2016, they pursued similar tactics.
No, they did not.
Can you name a single state where they had a false slate of electors made without the approval of the state legislature?
No. No, you
I
can't.
believe Colorado actually
No.
in 2016
No.
did put forward some alternate electors, or even said that they wanted to have a
Nope.
compromise candidate send electors to do the election and instead put Mitt Romney in as a compromise
I don't know.
candidate.
I don't even know what she's talking about here.
Hypothesizing on what a state legislature said that maybe they want to do to maybe they did is far different than
No, there
Trump's
was a push for
campaign.
it.
That's
There was
great
an
that there was a
actual
push
push.
for it. That's great that some people might have pushed for it. Donald Trump and his underling.
I think in this moment, she knows she's totally out of her depth. I think in this moment, she probably understands intuitively, like,
falsified 7 different slates of electors for Pence to choose on January 6th.
The frustrating thing about January 6th is that there's a lot of people that have no idea what happened.
This is anti-democratic. What could be less democratic than trying to change the outcome of the election of a state because you don't like the result?
Do you believe that
You
the
won, like,
election
6
results in
times.
Venezuela were accurate?
I'm not Venezuelan. I don't care about the results in Venezuela, but we had ways to challenge the results in the United States. Breaking the law and having the vice president choose you to be the president again, surely you can see the conflict of interest there, right? The guy that is president right now is saying that the election was rigged when he's running for election again. I mean, like, why would we trust this person who lost in every other forum?
In 2016, Democrats believed that the elections were rigged.
Hillary, what's the difference though? In 2016, Hillary conceded that night. Donald Trump said stop the count and tried to win the election early.
Did Hillary really concede,
Yep,
or
she
did they? She conceded and then
did.
continued to undermine.
Nope, she conceded.
Behind the scenes, Donald Trump's presidency continued to.
Not behind the scenes. She just felt like he was an illegitimate president because of Russia's interference, but she conceded the election that night.
Delegitimize it, continue to.
She went to Donald Trump's inauguration, for Christ's sakes.
To go after him numerous times over and over after 2016.
You can go after people however you want. What could be less democratic than Donald Trump telling Pence, I want you to make me the president again. I'm not happy with these court results. I'm not happy with what's going on. I need you to choose me again to be president.
I don't think that's actually a clear characterization of what really
It 1000% is.
happened.
It is absolutely what happened.
Yes.
It is
Well, from
verbatim.
your perspective.
No,
but I
from
don't
the
think
perspective
from
of every single person involved. That's why Eastman, after it failed, was emailing Giuliani saying like, hey, you remember that pardon list? I think I do need to be stuck on that. I think I'm going to need some pardons preemptively just in case. This is why Giuliani and Sidney Powell are being sued. It's why they've admitted that they lied about the voter fraud. It's why a lot of them are being disbarred now. Yes, this all happened. It's a very public record, very open testimonies under oath. Yes, all of this happened. So do you agree that Donald Trump telling the vice president, can you make me president again? That's like the least democratic thing you could ever do in a democracy.
I think that if you think that the election was rigged, I think that it is your responsibility to protect democracy.
You do that through the courts. That's the court's job. That's the court's job. We have 3 co-equal branches of government. They all check each other. It would be, of course, a horrible precedent to allow a president to just declare that he won the presidency when he lost. That would be a horrible thing. That would be bad. That would be bad for democracy. That would be the end of democracy. You wouldn't have democracy anymore if that was the case.
I think that Donald Trump should have tried to steal the election if he thinks that
forgive me, I just want to I want to give you a chance to each of you to get any last thoughts on this, but then I want to redirect us back to Kamala Harris per se.
Okay, yeah. I just think when we talk about democracies, the Democratic Party or the Republican Party could literally right now say, oh, here's my candidate. We're going to put this guy forward. And then you guys can vote for them or not in the general election. Both parties have a right to do that. They're private parties. They can do whatever they want, basically. The idea that Kamala Harris, who was the vice president, who was on the ticket, that delegates that switch from Biden to Kamala Harris is somehow anti-democratic. You don't have to vote for them in the general if you don't want to. Nobody's forcing you to do that. But somehow Donald Trump telling the vice president, hey, I need you to just pick me as the president. I need you to pick me and ignore, the will of the actual voters of the American population and just pick me to be the president again because I'm not happy with the results of the last election. That is the least democratic thing you could ever do in a democracy.
I think it was to delay in order to allow for more counting. I don't think it was just install me as president again and anoint me as president. It instead was a tactic to delay in order for the challenges to go through the courts.
The challenges had gone through and they'd all lost. All 64 cases were resolved by then. They had nothing live. Everything was dead. It was completely gone. That's why they wanted him to just choose him to be president again during the January 6th counting ceremony. Yeah.
Yep.
Forgive me, Kim. I'm sure you've got a round in the chamber ready to fire, but I do want to just redirect us just back to Kamala Harris per se.
Okay, so regarding Kamala Harris.
Why is this debate moderator bailing her out like this? What the
It is an undemocratic process to anoint.
She's the one that brought up like Kamala Harris is this threat to democracy. And so it's perfectly reasonable for Destiny to interrogate her idea of like what a healthy democracy is.
The next person, even if the Democratic Party is allowed to do this because they are a private company. I understand that the courts have ruled in that way.
This guy's using a Logitech 480p webcam with like a $20 blue, what do they call it? Like snowball microphones?
Shouldn't that?
And he's wearing a suit. Like you can afford a suit, but you can't afford a 1080p webcam for Christ's sakes?
Bother you if you are somebody who actually wants to protect
2D.
democracy.
True.
It doesn't matter if these are private companies, if these are private corporations. They're supposed to be championing and standing for democracy.
Yeah.
And in fact, that is something that the Democratic Party claims that they are holding the torch for, is democracy. Yet what they do is they completely undermine the voters. Kamala Harris has the lowest rating ever of any vice president in the history of this country.
Again, look at her public approval ratings now. She's in 538's aggregate, she's like a couple points shy of being above water. But there are 2 or 3 public opinion polls at this point that have her above 50%, which is extremely rare for any national politician.
And yet they anointed her as vice president without even an open primary. They didn't have an open primary, nor did they have an open convention that would have allowed at least the electors to vote for other people. They didn't even allow that. They just said, Kamala Harris is our person. This is a person you're going to have to vote for. And they didn't give you a choice. That is completely against democracy.
I have a choice.
Jesus
I can
Christ.
vote for whoever I want in the general election. So you're completely wrong there. The goal of the party is to put forth a candidate that is the most likely to win the election. I think that the Democratic Party choosing the person who is on the ticket that won more votes in any presidential election in all of history is probably better than trying to have an open primary and having us devolve into a crazy, show for a month trying to figure out who the next candidate is going to be. I think the DNC choosing Kamala Harris probably gives them the best chance to win in the general, and I'll be voting for Kamala Harris because she was part of the ticket that all the other Democrats voted for on the last election. If you're not happy with that or if you don't like that, that's fine, but it's not anti-democratic because nobody is forcing you to vote that ticket. If you want, vote for somebody else or just don't vote at all or have a protest vote or whatever, and the DNC would probably never do that again. The idea that it was anti-democratic for the DNC to pick the path that they wanted to put forth who they felt was the best candidate, which traditionally they do with the delegate process or an open primary, but this time because of extenuating circumstances, they just went with the vice president who was already on the ticket. I think to call that anti-democratic is silly. There's nothing anti-democratic about that. Nobody's forcing you to vote for Kamala in the general election.
How else are you going to vote? Who would you vote for then? Who are your options?
Don't vote Donald Trump, Jill Stein, Cornel West.
Trump. I could vote for Jill Stein or the Libertarian candidate. You vote for whoever
I didn't
you want to
pre-watch,
vote for.
I swear.
It's the United States of America.
So you don't think that the party that is saying we are the party for democracy and then completely subverting that democracy and not even listening to the will of the Democratic voters and instead just giving
the will of the Democratic voters? After the debate, a majority of Democratic voters wanted Joe Biden to step aside. And it only took her maybe like a week, 2 weeks before she had full majority support from Democratic voters. I think within 2 weeks, she had the support of like 80% of voters. 3 weeks after that, she had the support of like 90%. She's trying to appeal to these like make-believe Democrats that are upset. I mean, there are some people out there that are still kind of salty that they pushed Biden out, but even they are happy that Kamala took over at this point.
force feeding them a candidate. You think that
We
that
went
is
from being-
fine? That's
We went from being down in basically every poll for every swing state to essentially ahead in every swing state now, except for maybe Arizona and Georgia. It's not a big mystery why Democratic voters are happy that Kamala took over, especially after that debate.
They're standing for democracy is not what you do inside of a company. Democracy is not what happens in the McDonald's manager's office. Democracy is what we do to protect the institutions of the United States of America while we're expressing our will through the structures of our government. The Democratic Party, as a private party, their goal is to put up the candidate that they think can win best. When the Democratic Party talks about protecting democracy, they're not talking about the internal primary process or how they, put delegates to different candidates. They're talking about defending democracy in the United States of America as part of the U.S. government. So their goal should be to put up the strongest candidate. There aren't a ton of people in the Democratic Party that hate Kamala Harris and are mad that they put her up. There are some extreme people, or there are some outsiders that are trying to say that it should be different. But Kamala was part of the most winning ticket in all of presidential history. If anything, I think I'd be more upset if I was a Republican and I saw that Donald Trump didn't even debate the other Republican candidates because he was so scared of now, as we've seen, being exposed as a delusional, insane old man that can't even hold his composure on stage. Donald Trump didn't have a single debate with Haley or with DeSantis, and you're going to say that process was somehow more democratic?
Yeah.
Like, no, they're private parties, but the Republican Party can choose their nominee however they want as well. I don't care.
So is it a democracy if, let's say, both parties just decide that they're going to nominate the same exact candidate and we're all going to have one choice, and they have the freedom to do that because they're both corporate private entities. So let's say they decide that they're both going to put forward their person, and that's who we get to choose, and there's nobody else on the ticket. Is it democracy just because we do get to go through the process of casting the vote for the one person that's available to us? Is that democracy?
Other people could run for president. Nobody's forcing you to vote for that candidate. You could do write-ins. You could vote for another person. You don't have to vote for who the two major parties nominate. You understand that how private companies do things it has nothing to do with democracy, right? Like the DNC could say, we're going to do a survey across the United States of America, and we're going to make the tallest person in America our candidate. That would have no impact on our democracy. I imagine a lot of people would be upset. I probably just wouldn't vote for the Democratic ticket, and I'm sure another party would arise. If we believe in free market capitalism and freedom and all that, I'm sure another party would come up and they would offer a better candidate. That has no impact on our democracy. Nobody's forcing me to put this person in government. This is just the candidate they're putting up. And again, I don't think we disagree. Kamala Harris was part of the ticket that got more votes than any other presidential ticket in the entire history of the United States. So why would I want them to do an open primary with a month to go and then have the entire party descend into chaos? Would that be more democratic to allow a whole bunch of people to come in and a whole bunch of crazy stuff to happen? Would we be more unified in 1 month afterwards? No, I think the DNC made the correct choice. The majority of the Democratic voters seem to think that they made the right choice. The fact that the Republican Party is currently in free fall, I think means that most people think the Democratic Party made the right choice. So yeah, I think it was a good choice. And if you don't like it, just don't vote for him. There's no impact on our democracy.
This is the most bizarre argument. I'll let you have that one, because ultimately, I think
Thanks. Appreciate that.
you just argued against yourself. This is not, you just described anti-democratic processes and trying to claim that it's democracy. I don't even know how to go with that.
When a supervisor tells an employee that they need to clock out because they're going to get overtime, is that anti-democratic?
Companies are not democracies.
They can be, can't they?
Wait, wasn't that the point he was making? The DNC is a private company.
You have the right
you know what?
to leave
You're
your
right.
job.
I agree with you. I agree with what you just said. Companies are not democracies.
Yes.
Okay. The RNC and the DNC are private companies. That's all they are.
Yes.
And I agree with you. They're not democracies.
They're private companies that should not be running as private companies, especially when one of them in particular champions itself as the torchbearer.
What the f does that even mean?
For democracy.
So what, we should pass laws in Congress that make the parties part of our Constitution, or we imbue them in law somehow? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah.
I think that there should be.
Oh my God. She doesn't want to give an inch on this argument, so she's willing to take the most absurd position. She wants to enshrine, okay, so there's a Republican Party and a Democratic Party. And I guess we put that in the Constitution. And then how does that work? I mean, should we also put the Green Party in there? Should we put the Libertarian Party? Should we put the Church of Satan? Should we make them a party as well?
Be some laws that say that these political parties, if they are going to be political parties putting forth political candidates, that they do have to operate on the basis of democracy, that they should not be operating on the basis of being a private company. That even if they are private corporations, they are still participating in a certain marketplace, the marketplace of democracy, and they need to follow democratic processes in order to participate in that marketplace. Otherwise, start a different company, be a different type of corporation, sell a product.
If you want to do that, that's fine. But we would have to change the entire process. Primaries aren't even really. Yes, absolutely. Do you think that a primary is even that democratic? How many people vote in the primaries? 10 or 11 million people? What's democratic about people campaigning for Iowa and New Hampshire because they just arbitrarily happen to be the first two states, that are casting the votes? What's democratic about a caucus, right? A bunch of people standing around and raising their hand and doing, A's and nays. Come on, or I's and A's.
To be fair, I feel like caucusing is actually way more democratic, but I just feel like you shouldn't have to do it in person. Just do ranked choice voting. I would be so pissed if I lived in Iowa. Bro, it's 6 p.m. I don't want to go stand in a gym and then go over to that group and go over to this group and go over to that group. Just let me do ranked choice voting. Why did they do that?
It's no, the idea that the primary process is some holy vanguard of democracy is silly. When historically, over 100 years ago, I don't think parties had primaries for candidates. They literally just put a candidate forward, and we were closer in time then to our founding fathers than we are now. So this idea that we're less democratic because of how these are private companies. They can put forth candidates however they want. If you don't like it, don't vote for it.
So, okay. I mean, it's if you're going to participate in a democracy, this is kind of like the argument about when certain companies don't want to give services to certain groups.
It sounds like the principled conservative is taking a big government position. We need to make the government bigger. We need to have the government assert more control over party politics, which is an interesting position for a right-winger to take. I don't think she intended to take this position. I think Destiny forced her into taking this position. He's just kind of dog-walking her here. I don't know if she's ever had this thought before in her life, but she's just taking this position because she doesn't want to look stupid in the debate. She's a Jill Stein voter, not a conservative? Wait, are you sure? Co-host of the Hill's popular web program Rising. Is she on Rising? When I looked at her channel, it looked like a conservatives channel. She's like a perfect example of horseshoe theory in action. Here she is explaining her political affiliation.
You know, who's the Puritan libertarian? Who's the Puritan progressive, right? So I called myself a progressive for a really long time until the pandemic hit. And then I just was like, I guess I'm not a progressive anymore, because now we just are not aligned on more and more things. And it's becoming really, really clear that I'm just not aligned with the people that I thought I was aligned with. I thought I was a progressive because I believe in Medicare for all. And I liked Bernie Sanders for president. I wanted to end wars. I thought that was a liberal, a leftist position. It turns out that's not, is it? So I considered myself a progressive, but then as time has gone on, I've become politically homeless, which a lot of people have, where if you take a stance that's not in line with the groupthink, even though I believe I have very consistent viewpoints, I think all of my viewpoints are incredibly consistent. Doubtful. And I actually admire others who have really consistent viewpoints.
She crossed that horseshoe and entered the event horizon. True.
If our viewpoints are entirely opposite, at least they're consistent in why they think.
She's a Dave Rubin liberal. Give her about 2 years and she'll have like a coming out party for being a conservative.
I think we just look at where we are right now as an economy. We're just definitely worse off. We have much higher inflation. Under Biden, it has reached a peak of 9%. Under Donald Trump, I believe that the average inflation was about 1.8. So it's a lot lower. We look at unemployment and jobs. We can't. The COVID pandemic, we can't really count that in. It's unfair to say how many jobs were lost during the pandemic.
It's unfair to not count unemployment in 2020 because of the pandemic. Why is it fair to saddle inflation on Biden's front door? That analogy makes no sense. Saddle it on his front door. Why is it appropriate to attribute inflation to post-COVID inflation that the entire world experienced? Basically, the entire world. You can put that on Biden, but you can't put joblessness on Trump during the pandemic? How do you explain that?
Pandemic, and then how many jobs were regained. But now we've leveled out. We can look at where we're at today in 2024 or even in 2023 comparatively to.
Yeah, it sure seems like we had a soft landing. The Fed and the Biden administration were aiming for a soft landing, and that's basically what happened. Inflation got pretty high. I mean, that's not like there wasn't consequences. Not like people didn't feel the impact of inflation, but was it worse than the Great Recession? No. Was it worse than recessions that we experienced in the 70s and 80s? No. Was it worse than the Great Depression? No.
Under Donald Trump in 2018 and 2019. And I think there's no doubt that we are worse off economically by all measurements today than we were in 2018 or 2019.
Yeah, there's this unfortunate.
They prey on people's ignorance by talking about this. Like, because when you talk about the raw numbers without any context whatsoever, then yeah, you get to say like, well, look at the inflation, look at the mediocre GDP growth in the last quarter or whatever. But there's no sense of like context. There's no sense of our relative economic health compared with the rest of the industrialized world. And I think that picture obviously tells a much different story.
A reality that every time a Democrat comes in office, we basically have to clean up the insane disaster left to us by the last Republican president. When it was Obama,
it's happened the last 3 times. Bill Clinton had to come in and clean up a struggling economy. Barack Obama had to come in on the verge of a global economic meltdown. And Joe Biden took office when we were experiencing an economic downturn as well. It's been the last 3 Democratic presidents. Same with probably Carter as well, right?
Was having to clean up the disaster of the 2008 financial crisis. And when it was Biden, it was trying to clean up the disastrous response that Trump had to COVID. So is the economy worse off now than it was in like 2018? I mean, it depends on which indicators or which metrics you're looking at. There are definitely some things that are harder. Inflation was definitely an issue relating to COVID. But one thing that I noticed was curiously absent from Kim's answer here was, what is Trump going to do about it? There were no policy positions given. There were just statements made about the state of the economy. Donald Trump did
we're going to get rid of the illegal immigrants.
That, of course, would contribute to the inflation that we saw a few years later. Donald Trump slashed taxes. He cut government revenue, and he didn't actually decrease any of the government spending. He ran the highest budget deficits for no reason of any president in all of history. At least Biden can say, well, I was dealing with COVID. I had to do something. Trump just ran massive deficits because he wanted to, because it was the popular thing to do. When the Fed talked about...
And Biden reduced the deficit, if you care about that kind of thing. Biden reduced the deficit on his watch.
Raising rates, he tried to bully them on Twitter.
All of his legislation was paid for.
So yeah, of course, anything we go to government that's willing to just spend like crazy and reduce the amount of money they take in, of course, the economy is going to be booming. But I mean,
the ARP was the ARP deficit neutral? I can't remember.
Yeah, if you print a ton of money and you just give it to people for no reason, of course the economy is going to be booming. What are the policies that Donald Trump is suggesting now that would help Americans going forward? And what do we think about this tariff idea? He keeps saying 10% tariffs, 20% tariffs on everything. How is that just not going to boost inflation even more?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of the tariff idea. I don't agree with Donald Trump on that.
Why would you endorse him for his like economic policies? That's his primary economic policy that he's put forward in 2024. It's literally his main position. We're just going to fix everything with a flat 10% tariff on everything.
But going back to Harris,
there are no credible economists that endorse this idea. Every credible economist tells you that those tariffs, the cost of those tariffs is just going to be passed to consumers. It's just, okay, now you're going to be spending 10% more on dishwashers and toasters and cars and blah, blah, blah.
His policies and whether or not she has anything that's going to be boosting the economy. I mean, to say that the Democrats are here now cleaning up Republicans' mess, it's an odd way to clean it up. With record inflation, and we've got a record.
Why did Biden press the inflation button? That's one thing that I'm really pissed at. Biden could have done so many things, and he pressed the inflation button, and he jacked up our inflation to 9%. It's like, why did you press the button, bro? Why didn't you press the inflation go down button? It's just stupid, you know? Listen, I'm a straight shooter, respected on both sides. I call balls and strikes around here, and I think it was a bad policy for Biden to press the inflation button. I think it's important to hold your own to account, you know, lest you be labeled a hyper-partisan hack, right?
Now gig economy, so people are not able to get full-time jobs with benefits. They're instead having to hustle,
this is just, she's just making shit at this point.
3 jobs. This is an odd way.
We had a record streak of unemployment in this country. But the thing that every Republican does when you talk about economic markers improving during a Democratic administration, they do it every time. My dad's done it in so many different conversations where they basically accuse Democrats of cooking the books. That's how they cope with this. Well, they say there's 4.2% unemployment, but come on. I mean, just look around, way
to clean up the mess. So if this is their idea of cleaning it up, I think most Americans agree that they would like to see some change. So, maybe Trump, it's unclear exactly what maybe he would do to now clean up Democrats' mess. But I think that just the option for change.
Mess? Really? Like if Donald Trump won and he was inaugurated in January, he would be walking into what's our inflation right now? It's under 3%. Our unemployment, I think, is like right around 5%. Our GDP growth is like nominal. What mess would he have to clean up? What is she even talking about?
And potentially the ability to lower
real wages have been growing for 2 years now. So wages compared with inflation, even adjusted for inflation, wages have been going up on average for 2 years now. Like, what would he have to clean up?
Inflation to better the economy, to better our lives. People, I think, are willing to take that risk if the alternative is more of the same.
Yeah. So all I heard was there was one Trump policy I've heard of called tariffs, and I don't like that, and I don't know what else he would do, but hopefully it would be better.
What I'm saying is that what exactly did Biden and Harris do? That
Biden and Harris managed. I mean, they managed COVID decently well.
They managed it extremely well. They wanted to do 100 million vaccines in the first 100 days. They did 200 million vaccines in the first 100 days.
Inflation, but there was less inflation.
That was not a small job. They had to coordinate at the state level in all 50 states and then 2 other territories as well. That's not a small task. You need a competent administration to do something like that.
Or we're doing better than basically everybody else right now. Yeah, there was inflation. There was inflation worldwide. COVID was a huge, worldwide stimulus given to every single country on the planet. So, of course, there's definitely going to be inflation felt. And Donald Trump didn't do anything to help inflation. Why would I think Donald Trump could help inflation when he had a booming economy and he didn't manage to cut the deficit? Donald Trump couldn't manage the budget when the economy was exploding. Why would I think he could manage the budget when the economy is having trouble? And now you've got the Fed actually announcing that they're going to be cutting rates because inflation has come under control. So it seems like the administration is heading in the right direction. Why would I trust Donald Trump, whose only economic policy he's put forth would increase inflation, which are tariffs? Why would I trust him to do anything good? Can you articulate a single policy that you think Trump would do that would be good for the average American, that would actually help the economy?
Come on, just give us one policy, just one. Can you do it?
Well, I could tell you what he wouldn't have done that Democrats did do that actually crushed our economy, that actually crushed the economies around the world during COVID in particular, and that was government shutdowns.
Oh my God. What a pivot. Lady, he's asking you for just give me a single Trump policy.
Democrats with their Democratic governors, and that they were taking directives from top.
It wasn't just Democratic governors. It wasn't just Democratic governors that were doing shutdowns.
Down, closing the economy. Of course, when you close the economy, you're going to end up with a lot of ramifications that are going to be very damaging to an economy.
Ma'am, we were at a point in this country where 3,000 to 5,000 people were dying every day from COVID. We were at a point in this country where nurses and doctors were wearing the same mask for like 20-hour shifts. The hospital, there were hospitals that were overwhelmed all over the country. Why do you think they shut the economy down? It wasn't for no reason.
Something that any
yeah, they were literally wearing trash bags, lady.
Economy, everything was very bad under Biden. Things have been bad with COVID. I don't know exactly what you think they did to clean up COVID or to help during that crisis, when actually all of the decisions, in particular,
they distributed 200 million vaccines in 100 days. It was like 70% of the country, like between 60 and 70% of the country were vaccinated within the first. The vaccine first became available, I believe, for like elderly people at the end of 2020, in December of 2020. And by May or June, it was 60 to 70% of the country was vaccinated through a massive coordination campaign with the federal government.
Lockdowns have led to,
which saved, I don't know how many lives did that save? It saved, they estimate, millions of lives.
To massive disaster.
Who do you think was the president during the majority of the lockdowns?
Who do you think actually directed the lockdowns?
Okay, the answer was Donald Trump. The answer was Donald Trump. So Donald Trump was the president during the majority of lockdowns, number one. Number two, when you say, what did the Democrats do? I mean, we could look at a ton of different things. They had the child tax credit, something that Kamala Harris wants to bring back. The child tax credit slashed childhood poverty by like, what, 50%, 54%? It was a huge boost to working families.
Oh, you can see on her face that she's just like, why did I take this debate? It's stupid of me.
What else did they do? Biden
She's so out of her depth, bro. She's so out of her depth here. How do you, if this is her job, you guys, this is her job. It's her job to talk about these issues. She gets paid. She makes her money talking about these issues. And then when you interrogate her on her beliefs or whatever, she has no idea what she's talking about.
Legislation to make meaningful change and meaningful investments in our ability to manufacture microprocessors with the CHIPS Act, the ability to reinvest in our infrastructure with the infrastructure bill, a bill that Donald Trump wanted to get passed, but he couldn't the 4 years that was here. He actually managed to pass a bill that tried to offset the spending of the bill with new tax receipts with the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. I mean, what didn't they do? I mean, the Democrats tried their best, and I think we've seen the results of that. The United States is crushing the rest of the world due to actual legislation that I can articulate and actual policies that I can articulate. Donald Trump just rode off of an economy that was already booming under the last few years of Obama. We've been posting all-time highs in the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones for what, since I think 20...
Yeah, bro. On Obama's watch, unemployment spiked up to I think 11, 12% because of the Great Recession. And it came back down to nominal levels. Again, it came back down to 6, 5, 4% on his watch. By the time Donald Trump took office, our GDP growth was super healthy. We had a low unemployment rate. We were posting record high stock market prices. That's what he walked into, and they pretend like he's responsible for that economy. And then when you ask them hey, what did Donald Trump do to make our economy so good in 2017 and 18 and 19 or whatever, and they all just kind of say vague oh yeah, he deregulated stuff. Really? What specific deregulation are you talking about?
It was 2013, and all Trump did was came in and he spent more, and then bullied the Fed when they talked about raising rates because they were getting worried about inflation. And then here we are. Again, you can't articulate a single policy or a single thing that Donald Trump would do. You're mad at shutdowns that happened under Donald Trump.
I'm not arguing for Donald Trump. We're arguing against Kamala Harris, very specifically. I am not for Donald Trump.
Ma'am, it was a binary question. Who do you think would be better for the economy, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump? You are saying it's Donald Trump. What do you mean? You're not for Donald Trump? What are you talking about?
I'm not voting for Donald Trump. Let me just make that extremely clear. So I'm not arguing on behalf of Donald Trump. I'm arguing against Kamala Harris. What we know is that Democrats have done a very piss poor job of actually managing the economy. We
Compared to who?
No, they did a phenomenal job. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
Day by every single measurement.
But we're better than every other country. We came out of COVID.
Except China.
Is China? I thought China was going through the middle of a real estate crisis right now. I don't think China's doing particularly well right now, are they?
Better off than every other first world country.
How are we better off? We have now given away.
What do you mean, how are we better off? Look at our rates of inflation. Look at our average wages. Look at the percentage of our paychecks that we spend on food. Compare that with Russia. I think in Russia, they spend 40% of their paycheck on food. 40% or something, some crazy number.
Loads of cash to Ukraine, to Israel. We're giving away our money.
That's a drop in the bucket compared to our budget yearly. Okay, number one. Number two, how are we better off? We're crushing them on our job market and our economy. We're crushing them when it comes to inflation. The USD is probably too strong right now for our exports market. What do you mean? How are we? We're crushing them in every way. You graduate with a computer science degree in the United Kingdom, and the first thing you're trying to do is find a job in the United States. You're trying to work for Amazon. You don't want to get paid 39,000 quid a year working as a programmer in the United Kingdom. What do you mean? How are we doing compared to the rest of the world? How are we beating them? We're beating them in like every single conceivable way, except for domestically, we're falling apart because of conservatives' refusal to accept reality. I think this conversation is a good example of that. The Harris policies, if they continue what Biden was doing, I think they put us on a good track. And it'd be cool to see what, Democrats can do when they're not just trying to recover from the disasters left to us by the last Republican administration.
So you're arguing that you really believe that the average American is better off today than they were under Donald Trump?
That's not the question. Would they have been better off under Donald Trump than they were under Biden? No, I don't believe so. I think Donald Trump would have made it worse somehow. He would have made it worse.
I don't know if they're better off today than they were under Donald Trump, but that's because we had COVID. The question isn't whether or not we're better off today than we were 4 years ago, because we can't go back in time. Time only moves in one direction.
I swear I didn't pre-watch this, okay? I swear to God.
The question is would we have been better off?
I swear to God, I didn't. I swear to God, I did not pre-watch it. It's just I'm just as intelligent and charismatic and attractive as Destiny. That's what's going on here. That's what's happening. I have better hair. I have a better beard. Probably better voice. I'm taller. Maybe I have better teeth. I don't know.
4 more years of Trump? Probably not. I don't think so. There's zero indication that that's the case. And then the question would be, in the next 4 years, are we going to be better off with Trump or with Harris? And I see no reason. Donald Trump couldn't pass any big bills or any legislation, even stuff he said he wanted to get done. He couldn't even repeal the ACA so he can control any of his spending. All he did was spend. Donald Trump's just... And the only major policy platform he's talking about are tariffs on everything. So why would I think Donald Trump would be good? The stock market is posting all-time highs, or unemployment is still low. The Fed wants to cut rates. Every economic indicator is looking positive. I don't even know what to say. What could Donald Trump possibly do? What's wrong with what Harris wants to do?
What's wrong with what Harris wants to do is just continue where we're at right now, which a lot of Americans don't want to be in, which is high inflation.
We are not in high inflation. I hate her so much. I hate her. I hate her. I hate her.
Come down. The Fed wants to cut rates. Why would the Fed be talking about cutting rates if inflation was still too high?
Yeah, it's a good question why they want to cut rates just weeks before an election. It's really,
oh my God,
really a good question why they would suddenly want to do that, a record cut.
Yeah, a Trump appointee, Jerome Powell, a Trump appointee is meddling in our election by cutting rates 2 months before an election because he wants to help Kamala Harris. Yeah, that makes sense.
To the rates.
Is the implication that the Federal Reserve is beholden to the Democratic Party? It's an independent operation of banks. What do you mean? I mean, we can do conspiracies if we want.
Well, they're definitely beholden to the establishment. They're part of the
What the does that even mean? God, she has such a baby brain.
Establishment. And Harris is certainly the establishment candidate compared to Donald Trump. So I think,
oh my God, she is truly one of the dumbest, most vapid commentators. I've never heard any of her stuff before today. I mean, this is like, she puts, at least Russell Brand, say what you will about him, but at least he puts effort into his grift. You know what I mean? At least he puts you can tell that he puts some effort into that grift. She is just phoning it in.
They would have a reason for wanting to maintain an establishment candidate in the White House. But when it comes to Kamala Harris...
Well, hold on. To be clear, what you are just blindly and conspiratorially suggesting, that's what Donald Trump actually tried to do, right? Your implication is that somehow the Fed is making political decisions. You know that Donald Trump was trying to force them to make political decisions, right?
Yeah.
Then when Donald Trump took to Twitter and took to the bully pulpit...
Donald Trump said in an interview semi-recently that president, especially him, should have a say in interest rates because he was such a successful businessman. He publicly pressured Jerome Powell all the time when it came to interest rates throughout his entire presidency.
As the president, he was attacking the Fed for talking about raising rates. He was attacking the Fed for that. That's what Donald Trump tried to do. What you're asserting with zero evidence that Biden and Kamala, do you not believe the inflation rates that are being posted? Do you think that's all a lie? So the Federal Reserve is just acting on nothing and nobody in our economy can see that? Or
well, don't you think that it's interesting then if you really believe, and maybe you're right, that the Fed completely operates completely independently from any political influence whatsoever, the fact that they feel like they need to do a rate cut this big, what does that tell you?
What do you mean a rate cut this big?
It tells you that inflation came down. They raised the interest rates to try to bring inflation down, and they did. It worked. It did.
This is a very large rate cut.
No, it's not.
This is a large rate cut. They don't do just half a point out of nowhere. They usually do a quarter of a point, not a half a point. That's actually quite a large rate cut.
No.
For them to be doing that right now shows that they believe the economy is in dire straits under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Oh my God, guys, she's so dumb. Bro, she is so dumb.
That they have to take
I don't know about economics, and I know more than she does.
drastic measures in order to correct it.
No, hold on. I'm so sorry.
Why are they doing it?
Wait.
Are
What
they
do you
doing
think?
it because
What are the
good?
two things that the Federal Reserve try to manage?
Why don't you tell me?
Okay, hold on. It's interest rates and, well, okay, hold on. They try to manage, is it unemployment and inflation? Is it unemployment and inflation?
Okay, so you don't know. Okay, the Federal Reserve tries to balance unemployment and they try to balance inflation.
Damn, I'm f***ing good. If you put me on the spot like that, though, I don't know. I might get anxious.
These are the two indicators that the Federal Reserve looks at to determine how they should set rates. If inflation is getting really, really, really low, then the Federal Reserve is going to cut rates because we should have some amount of inflation to keep the economy healthy and moving. That's how
Around 2% is what they target.
the Federal Reserve makes decisions. And then it also looks at unemployment. If unemployment is getting, too high,
Oh God, the look on her face, you guys. She's like, bro.
then they might cut
She's like, why did I say yes to this debate?
rates as well. It just depends. Like these are the two things, but balancing out unemployment and inflation are the two. That's the mission statement of the Federal Reserve. How could you accuse, the Federal Reserve of acting in a politically partisan way? You don't even know what the mission of the Federal Reserve is. You're just saying random things.
I'm dropping that accusation. I'm asking you, why did they do the rate cut?
Because they feel like inflation has come.
Did you not listen to a word he just said? He literally just explained it to you in semi-good, a semi-decent amount of detail. He walked you through it like a fifth grader, and you're just repeating the question. My goodness, you guys.
Down significantly.
So they want to boost it back up?
Yes.
So they did a rate cut because they want inflation.
What do you think the goal inflation percentage is? You have no idea. You realize you have no idea. You're laughing because you think inflation should be at 0%. Ideal inflation is 2%. What do you think unemployment should be? 0%? Yes, correct. 2% is the target. That's correct. And
unemployment 4.5, I'm guessing? Is it 4.5? Tiny Tim, thank you so much for the gifted, buddy.
they feel like we're undershooting that target, then they try to preemptively cut rates or raise rates because it takes a little bit for the Federal Reserve policy, for the federal funds rate to actually impact what the trading of all the securities and everything is later on. So yes, that's why they're doing it. We can all look at the inflation rate. We can all look at the unemployment. These numbers are all posted publicly and everybody looks at them. So, I mean...
So the economy is so great. So you're just saying the economy is great. You want to keep it going the way that it is.
I didn't say the economy. They don't look at the economy. They look at inflation.
I mean, for the record, our economy right now is pretty great. GDP growth could be a little bit better, but yeah, we're doing really good.
Inflation, and they look at unemployment,
which are indicators of the economy and how healthy the economy is.
They could be. They might not be. It just depends.
Whiskey Long with 9 months. Appreciate it, pal.
They are two indicators, but the goal of the Federal Reserve is not to make the economy good or make the economy bad. The two indicators that they look at are inflation and unemployment. Those are the two things that they're, yeah.
But you're arguing that you think that the economy under Kamala Harris and Joe Biden right now is great and that we should just continue on and that Americans are going to be fine.
Yes, I think obviously I've articulated policy, I've articulated economic positions, I've articulated how the economy has rebounded under COVID. I've articulated that the United States is ahead of the rest of the OECD. Every indicator points to the fact that this administration did a phenomenal job coming out of COVID for sure. And the major complaint that you had, the two major complaints I would guess would be like massive deficit spending, and then the one that you articulated, which was lockdowns. Like
how many of you guys got decent raises in the last 2 years? Because what the data show is that on average, a lot of people got raises in the last 2 years. Real wages have done pretty well for the last 2 years. Not everybody, right? But
happened under Donald Trump. So yeah, I do think that the Harris administration will be superior to whatever the Republicans put up.
All right, I think I'm done with this debate. Skip to the part where he accuses her of taking Russian money. Okay.
Yeah, we spent about $32 million on that Mueller investigation that didn't actually result in any sort of Russian interference or meddling in our elections. They instead uncovered people that maybe weren't exactly honest to Congress. So there was some...
None of this is true.
Obstruction of justice or...
How many indictments were there? I think 12, 13 indictments. Highly detailed account of Russian interference in our election.
Lying under oath that they ended up getting people for, but we really haven't actually gone and...
This really pisses me off, dude. Like you have one job. What's your name? Kim? Kim, you have one job. You have one job. Your job is to talk about topical, relevant political issues. And it's so obvious that you don't do any homework. You have no idea what you're talking about. God damn it. The right-wing grift, man, it's calling me, okay? I need to live that good life. I need to get those Putin bucks where it's not expected that I'm going to do even like a tiny amount of work. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to, like, bro, their job is so easy. They can just go in there and just wing it. They don't need to read anything. They don't need to read any news stories. They don't need to inform themselves. They don't need to, like, details. Who gives a fuck? Just speak in generalities. Never cite, like, any policies or anything. Just wing it and you're good. You can make hundreds of thousands of dollars a month. Russia, if you're listening, I will hire me, okay? I'm right here, okay? We have a modest platform on Twitch. We're starting to build things up on YouTube, but it'll be an investment for the future, okay? I will sell out, bro. It's like their job is so easy. Imagine being a right-wing grifter. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. You just wake up in the morning, take your sweet ass time, you know, your producer gives you your talking notes, your talking points for that day, and then you're good.
Found this massive Russian interference in our elections.
Hold on. Wait. Do you think that any indictments
Really
came
picky.
from the Mueller investigation?
Like I said, the indictments that came, were any of them because of Russian meddling?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Why?
Actual direct Russian.
Yes.
Who was indicted for Russian meddling?
There were 12 indictments made for
Yeah,
Russian
it was a
nationals
dozen,
that
bro.
ran a company in the United States called the Internet Research Agency that came from the Mueller investigations.
Look at her face too. Look at her face. She's like, bro, man, I couldn't even just read the cliff notes before this.
And the Mueller investigation concluded that they didn't really have much of an influence.
No,
Nothing
that's
in the
not
Mueller
true.
investigation
That's not true at
found
all.
that
There
there
was-
was any
they
real
can't even-
true influence in our elections.
That's not what,
Okay,
that's not what it
That's great.
said.
We can just make
Come on,
stuff
I hate
up.
to
But
do
hold
it.
on, to be clear, wait.
So we don't get too
How much
bogged
money did we
down.
waste on the Hillary email investigation? How much money did we waste on the Benghazi thing? How many millions of dollars did we just waste on the House's effort to impeach
We really
Biden?
have
And they
to
didn't even
keep-
do
I
an
hate to do
impeachment
this,
vote
but
at the
I
end. Like, it's not even close.
They say, why are there so many former left-wingers turning into rank-and-file Republicans? Maybe
'Cause the
they're-
money is good,
I think
bro.
that they know that you're not a Trump supporter, Kim. I think they mean other people. So
I mean, in effect, you are a Trump supporter. Of course you are. You're
I
a
think they're trying to say
you are a Trump stooge. It's so transparent.
that, for example,
You can't just say, well, I'm not going to vote for him. It's like, well, okay, fine, but you're still using your platform to push like basically every pro-Trump talking point that you can imagine.
Like a lot of Democrats are switching over to the Republican Party. I mean, I think
Is there data to show this? I mean, what we have observed is that Donald Trump has consolidated support for white people without a college degree, and he's starting to peel off a little bit of support from Hispanic voters and black voters, but Democrats are making up for those losses by consolidating support in the suburbs among educated professional voters, like professional people. So there's like a little bit of a realignment going on, but there's not like a massive exodus of the Democratic Party.
a shakeup of the parties, and we're seeing a lot of people.
We're widening our tent. I mean, you talk about like, bro, we got Dick Cheney rooting for us. Like, what the
People from the right, like Dick Cheney, moved to the left. Or I wouldn't say
Jesus.
right to left. I would
I
say
swear to God, I did not pre-watch this.
perhaps the parties are shifting themselves. So we've seen, like a lot of the intelligence community, the warmongering community, the military-industrial complex, the Dick Cheneys of the world supporting Democrats, and we're seeing people who had previously been Kennedy Democrats now supporting Republicans.
I think what you're actually saying is just there are some people very far on the left who are anti-establishment, who hate the United States, and these people find themselves in easy company when it goes to aligning with people on the very far right. And then I think that the fact that like the whole MAGA people are generally
I mean,
just
technically, my dad was a Kennedy Democrat. Like, I think my dad loved JFK, and he is full MAGA in his elderly years.
anti-establishment means that it's very easy to get anybody else that hates the United States or hates the establishment or takes foreign money from people like Russia or Iran or China to all go and join their groups as well. So I think that it's a pretty easy alliance when you get a bunch of people that hate the state, hate the government, hate the institutions, and are just in general anti-establishment. And they
I don't
stand
pretend
for
to
nothing.
know how people are thinking or feeling, nor do I have any desire to insult people.
How, you don't know what people are thinking or feel. How do you make comments on anything publicly?
I'm not going
ever?
to sit here and claim that all of these people hate America when they're participating in the democratic process. I'm not going to make those types of characterizations or call them basket of deplorables or do any sort of insulting of my fellow Americans because they're participating in democracy and they decide that the person that you want to vote for is not who they want to vote for.
Okay, well, that's great. I will call out people who I think take money from other countries and they don't declare it. People like who worked under Tenet Media, other people that are still operating in this media environment, people like yourself probably. I think it's worth calling those people out when they have other kinds of allegiances to other countries.
Are you claiming,
Number one,
are you making it, did you just say that I'm taking money from any other, what did
I mean, you act like you do. Like, if you did take money to push pro-Kremlin talking points, you would say the exact same things. You know what I mean? So you're either working for free or you're on the payroll. But either way.
you just say?
Probably, almost assuredly, yes. And then number two, I think that it's worth calling out people that I feel have anti-American ideas. So for instance, when Donald Trump says he wants to
Her face is turning red, you guys.
destroy the Constitution or suspend the Constitution, I think that that's...
Have we come closer to World War III under Biden than Trump? Who thinks that there's going to be World War III right now? Like, what would World War III even look like right now? Do you seriously believe that?
worth calling out. The Constitution exists above all three branches of
You're
government.
a piece of shit. Let me just say it. You're a piece of shit. Sorry, you just are. To make that kind of characterization.
Damn, she got triggered, so she loses, right? If you get triggered, you lose. I feel like that's kind of like a hard and fast rule when it comes to online discourse and online debates. If you start losing your shit, it's just you automatically lose, right?
Of me to make a claim that you know nothing about. I've never taken a single dime from any other country, not even this country.
Me doth think that she... Wait, hold on. What's the... She doth protest too much? What's the phrase?
Country. I am completely independent, and for you to make that sort of
now I feel like now I feel more sure that she takes Russian money.
Characterization, that sort of slander, that sort of slur right here in front of everybody, you're a piece of shit. And I speak for a lot of people when I say that.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure they're all flying to Moscow right now, comrade. Thank you.
Just because we going to this one, George says, does insurrection count as a violent crime? You say, Destiny, what are your thoughts on the Kamala Harris FBI prosecuting the Uyghurs movement for having Zoom meetings with a Russian? Because that seems...
The Kamala FBI? Wait, what? This is Kamala's FBI right now? Jesus.
Seems completely undemocratic and anti-free speech.
I don't know anything about that particular issue, so I wouldn't be able to speak on it.
The Uruhus were charged with, it's similar to...
What word are they saying? They're just making up words. Uruhu? What are they talking about? Does anybody have any idea what they're talking about?
Sort of what's gone on with Tenet Media a little bit, where they were accused of being Russian assets, essentially funded by Russia. They went to court. It was the Biden administration that went after them. They went to court and they actually just won their court case. They are found to not be Russian assets at all.
This one from George.
Also, it seems like, so for this Uruhu group, so they were convicted of conspiring with a Russian agent. They were acquitted on one charge and they were convicted of another. So they didn't beat everything, right?
Uh-oh.
I'm not 100% certain. I believe that they...
You don't know anything. You like, oh my God. You know what's depressing? She probably makes like 4 times more than me. Okay. I'm not even kidding. I'm sure she makes like 4 times more than me.
Beat their case.
Okay, they were handed a mixed verdict. You sounded very certain, but it sounds like they were actually convicted of conspiring with Russian agents, but they were acquitted of the more serious charge which would have been acting as agents of a foreign government. So I'm guessing this is a type of FAR violation, but it wasn't a type of FAR violation. But...
Yeah, so they had some contact with Russians.
Well, no, it doesn't sound like they just had some contact with Russians. I don't think there's a...
You don't get convicted of a crime for speaking with Russians. Gruntle, thank you so much for the primer.
A federal charge for just having contact with Russians. There was probably federal charges, though, relating to conspiring with foreign agents and not making a declaration of that to FARA, which is the law of the United States.
They had said, after Pearl Harbor, Germany declared war on the United States. They were obliged.
Oh, I see.
Because they had an alliance with Japan.
Well, yeah, and we went to war, right? I mean, we went to, but it wasn't the obligation of going to, the obligation is when you're attacked, your people are attacked, right? Then you do go to war. That is what people do. But the question was whether or not we're obliged to go to war on behalf.
Minerva with 5 gifted. Minerva, thank you so much. I appreciate you, buddy.
Of another country. We're obliged to go to war on behalf of ourselves. We can then resolve that war or engage in that war however we see fit.
One reason you may want to engage or participate in some other like regional war somewhere else is if you believe that you're heading off some kind of a future conflict on your own soil.
Whatever we think is the best way to get to the end result that we want to get to. But we're not, my point.
Like if we would have just allowed Imperial Japan to take over all of East Asia and allow Hitler to take all over all of, most of Europe, like how long would it have taken before they're pulling up with aircraft carriers on our borders?
We're not obliged to go to war We do have agreements. We have NATO agreements, which does make us obliged. At that time during World War II, we did not. So I wouldn't call it an obligation. There are times that we
I'm actually kind of shocked that she knows what NATO is. Like, she's that stupid to me.
choose where we think it's in our best interest to go to war, or we think it's a moral interest to go to war, or an ethical interest to go to war, but I wouldn't call it an obligation.
I think that if we want to keep trade free and open, like we have for the entirety of the planet, I think that if we want to keep the world at relative peace, which it has enjoyed more than it has at any other point in history under U.S. leadership, I think that we have an obligation both to the entire world and to our own citizens to ensure that that peace.
I've unironically become American exceptionalism pilled over the last like 2 years. I'm fully behind the idea of like America leading the way. I'm fully behind it.
Stays as well as it can with the United States at the head of it. I don't think that a Russia that has invaded Moldova, that has invaded Georgia,
Well, that's kind of a big shift for me, for real. That's like a really big shift for me.
that is invading Ukraine, that deploys its paramilitary to the Middle East and to Africa. I don't think that letting Russia control the world is good. I don't think that letting China, a country that is or is not currently maybe genociding their Uyghur citizens, that has its eyes set on Taiwan, I don't think letting them control the world would be good. I think that for the most part, I think the West is largely...
Her cheeks are still red, man. She just got blown out in this discussion.
enjoyed the U.S. being in charge of things.
embarrassing
And I think that most of the
performance.
world probably enjoys, for the most part, the United States being at the head of things rather than people like Putin or Xi Jinping.
That was so bad. How do they find these people? I'll bet you maybe we can get her to have a conversation with me. I'll bet you she'd say yes, right?